Welcome to the What Just Happened podcast. Today we'll be diving into the recent news surrounding Elon Musk's involvement in the Trump administration and the subsequent fallout.
Yeah, fallout for his political standing, definitely, but also for his businesses, especially Tesla.
Exactly. Our sources indicate a potentially significant shift, Musk reportedly preparing to exit his government role. We want to examine the possible reasons why.
And the wider context, right? His influence, the controversies.
Definitely. And then there's the impact on Tesla. We're seeing reports of, well, declining sales, maybe a damaged brand.
And that stock value drop is quite something. Plus, their least profitable quarter in, several years? Since 2021, I think.
Yeah, we'll get into those numbers.
Good.
And finally, there are these quite concerning allegations from a former Tesla engineer.
The whistleblower, yeah. Talking about internal culture, safety issues, raises some serious questions about leadership.
It does. Okay, let's try and unpack all of this. Where do we start? Maybe with the reported exit from government.
Sounds good. So the fascinating thing here is the official line, or what's being reported as the reason, vicious and unethical attacks from the left. That's the quote floating around.
Right.
Yeah.
But does that tell the whole story?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Because this comes alongside other reports suggesting his actual influence within the administration was maybe waning.
So was it really just the external attacks, or was his position inside already weakening? That's kind of the core of it.
Exactly. And you see hints of that weakening, potentially.
Like what?
Well, remember his famous management style? That email, tell me 5 things you did last week or you're fired.
Oh, yeah, very direct. Very Musk.
Apparently, according to sources, when he tried that with government employees, it was largely ignored.
Really? Ignored?
Yeah. Which kind of suggests maybe his usual top-down authority just didn't translate well into that government structure.
Interesting. It speaks to maybe a different kind of power dynamic, right? You can't just fire civil servants like that.
Yeah, precisely. It highlights the challenge of bringing that corporate CEO playbook into the complex world of government bureaucracy. There was resistance.
Wasn't there that incident with the Pentagon briefing?
Ah, yes. That's another piece suggesting maybe overreach, or at least a disconnect.
What happened there again?
Reports suggest Musk arranged a top-secret Pentagon briefing for himself on China war plans.
Okay.
But apparently Trump himself wasn't aware Musk had set this up, and when it came to light, it got canceled.
Wow. So arranging a top-secret briefing without the president knowing, that seems bold.
It definitely raises questions about, who has access to what and whether established channels were being bypassed. It touches on those crucial checks and balances in national security.
Yeah, who's really in charge of the information flow? And then there was the Treasury Secretary issue.
Right. The complaint was, reportedly, that Musk tried to install his preferred candidate as the acting IRS commissioner.
Without broad support, it sounds like.
Apparently so. And the reports say Trump actually had that person removed afterwards?
So an attempt to put his own person in a key spot, potentially sidestepping the usual process, and then getting pushed back.
That's what it looks like. It could be seen as trying to, maybe, manipulate the government machinery by placing loyalists in key roles, undermining the agency's independence, potentially.
But the pushback suggests maybe that influence wasn't absolute.
Exactly. And then you had the public spats, didn't you?
With Peter Navarro, the trade advisor. Yeah. Musk wasn't exactly diplomatic there.
Calling him dumber than a sack of bricks, I believe was the reported phrase.
Something like that, yeah. Very public disagreement over tariffs.
Which again suggests maybe a lack of cohesion within the administration's economic team.
Yeah.
Not exactly presenting a united front.
Okay, so that's the picture on his potential government exit and influence. What about that efficiency initiative he was involved with? The Department of Government Efficiency.
Ah, DOGE. Yes, the nickname it apparently got.
The goal was obviously cut government spending, make things more efficient.
That was the stated aim, yes. But here's the kicker. Sources indicate that during the period Musk was involved in these efforts under Trump, the administration was reportedly spending more per day than the subsequent Biden administration.
More, even with an efficiency drive.
Apparently so. Which raises, pretty big questions about how effective that whole initiative actually was. A huge gap between the promise and the reality.
Doesn't exactly scream success, does it?
Not really, and it wasn't helped by some of Musk's own reported statements.
Like what?
Well, there was that claim about 150-year-olds getting Social Security.
Which is not accurate, right?
Not remotely. It was quickly debunked. It suggested a, shall we say, lack of familiarity with basic government data for the programs he was supposedly trying to make more efficient.
Yeah, that doesn't exactly build confidence in the whole project. It undermines credibility.
Absolutely. If you don't grasp the basics, how can you effectively reform it?
So what was the overall verdict on Doge from the sources you saw?
Pretty damning, actually. Words like embarrassment, confusion, horror, anger, and the phrase, nothing positive to show for itself.
Ouch.
Some went even further, calling it potentially the biggest program failure in the history of American government. Accusations of, like, chiseling away at the foundations of government, leaving it weaker.
Wow.
Like-
Chiseling the foundation.
Yeah.
That's strong language. Suggests it wasn't just ineffective, but actually harmful.
That's the implication in some of these reports. A failure that might have had real negative consequences beyond just not saving money.
Okay, so a potentially rocky time in government. How is all this political involvement playing out for Tesla?
Well, that's where things get financially concerning for the company. Tesla's stock value. It's taken a significant hit this year.
How big a hit are we talking?
Reports vary slightly, but somewhere in the range of 40 to 44% down this year alone.
40%. That's huge.
It is. And it means Tesla actually fell out of the top 10 U.S. companies by market value.
Really? For the first time in a while?
First time since June 2024, according to reports. So, yeah, a significant drop in ranking.
Now, what are analysts saying is behind this? Is it linked to Musk's politics?
Many analysts are drawing that connection, yes. The theory is that Musk's very prominent and sometimes controversial role in the Trump administration has alienated a chunk of potential customers.
Leading to consumer backlash.
That's the argument, that the brand itself has been damaged because the CEO is such a polarizing figure and it's hitting sales.
And the financial results seem to back that up.
Well, Tesla reported its worst quarter in years, both for revenue and sales. Profitability took a big hit, too. It was their least profitable period since the first quarter of 2021.
So sales down, profits down.
Right. And digging deeper, their core automotive business revenue, just selling cars, reportedly plunged 20% compared to the same time last year.
20% drop in car revenue. That's substantial.
It really is.
Yeah.
And get this, reports suggest their operating profit for the quarter would actually have been negative if it weren't for selling automotive regulatory credits.
Ah, the ZEV credits. So they basically needed those credits, which they get for selling EVs and can sell to other car makers, just to stay in the black operationally.
That seems to be the case based on the analysis. It suggests the fundamental profitability of just making and selling cars is under serious pressure right now.
That sounds precarious.
Some financial experts are certainly using strong language. Warnings about a code red situation teetering at the edge of calamity.
Code red.
Yeah, and one analyst suggested this isn't just a temporary dip. They worried about potentially 15 to 20% permanent demand destruction.
Permanent. Because the brand damage is that deep.
That was the concern raised, yeah, that the association with Musk's politics has done lasting harm to how people see Tesla.
Okay, so significant financial headwinds potentially linked to the CEO's political profile. Now let's turn to those whistleblower allegations. Christina Milan.
Yes, a former Tesla engineer. She recently won a legal battle which allowed her to speak publicly about her experiences.
And she didn't hold back, did she?
No, she certainly did not. She used incredibly strong terms to describe Elon Musk, vindictive monster, pure evil, claimed he enjoys hurting people. Very intense language.
And she made claims about how Tesla operates internally, specifically around silencing employees.
Correct. She alleged that Tesla forces employees into signing arbitration agreements. Basically, it means disputes have to be settled privately outside of court. She claims this limits employees' freedom of speech and their right to sue, effectively acting as a way to protect Musk's image and control the narrative.
A potential legal loophole to keep things quiet.
That's the accusation. And she described a specific incident involving a safety issue she raised.
What was that?
She said she brought up a concern about brake safety directly to Musk, apparently, after he encouraged employees to communicate directly with him.
Okay, so she did what he asked.
According to her account, yes, but the alleged reaction was severe. She claims her entire team, who were immigrants, were threatened with deportation for supporting her concerns.
Threatened with deportation. For backing up a safety concern.
That's her allegation. A very serious form of potential retaliation, leveraging immigration status to, perhaps, suppress dissent.
That's incredibly disturbing if true. What happened to her?
She claims she was taken to an interrogation room and essentially forced to resign. She alleges this was done specifically to stop an internal investigation into that brake safety issue she'd raised.
Forced out to bury a safety investigation.
That's the claim. And she adds another layer, alleging that a vice president of engineering at Tesla admitted to her that the safety issue was potentially huge. Quote, bigger than the Toyota recall.
Bigger than the Toyota recall.
Yeah.
That involved millions of cars.
Exactly. It suggests knowledge at a high level of a potentially massive safety defect that was allegedly being covered up, prioritizing image over safety, potentially.
And she mentioned other defects, too.
Yeah, she alleged there were routinely hundreds of defects per car being shipped out.
Hundreds. Per car.
That was her claim.
Yeah.
And crucially, she says she has a recorded conversation proving the company knew about the brake safety issue and tried to bury it.
Recorded evidence. That could be significant.
Potentially, yes. She also mentioned that this wasn't unique to her, claiming similar things happened to employees who raised issues in Tesla's Norway and Germany operations, fired for speaking up.
Suggesting a potential pattern of silencing critics across the company globally.
That's certainly the picture her allegations paint. Systemic issues around handling safety concerns and internal dissent.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to take in. So let's try and tie this together. What does it all mean when you look at the whole picture?
Well, you have this prominent, powerful tech figure deeply involved in high-level politics.
And it seems like that foray is having some pretty serious repercussions, doesn't it? Both for his own standing and reputation.
And very tangible negative consequences for his main company, Tesla. The financial numbers and market reaction seem to reflect that.
The reasons reported for his potential exit from the Trump administration, the official versus the rumored ones, suggest maybe a clash. Ambition versus the messy reality of Washington power.
Missteps, maybe a loss of influence, yeah. And at the same time, you see Tesla facing these major headwinds.
The stock drop, the poor quarterly results, the analyst warnings. It really points to a brand potentially quite damaged by the CEO's political activities.
Definitely. And then layered on top of all that, you have the Whistleblowers account.
Which gives this really disturbing glimpse into Tesla's alleged internal culture, raising huge questions about safety, how employees are treated, accountability.
Especially employees who raise uncomfortable truths, it seems.
So it really leaves you, the listener, with a lot to think about, doesn't it? What happens when these incredibly powerful figures blur the lines between business and politics so intensely?
Yeah, what are the consequences? And how vulnerable are even these massive, seemingly untouchable brands to public perception, especially when driven by the CEO's actions?
And that critical need for transparency, for accountability inside these huge corporations, especially when safety might be involved.
Absolutely. This whole situation really makes you consider the long-term implications, doesn't it? For the future of EVs, sure, but also more broadly. What's the role and influence of tech leaders in the political sphere going forward?
It's definitely a story that feels like it's still unfolding. Lots of questions remain.